Welcome to Energy Vista, a podcast on energy issues, personal and professional trajectories. I'm your host, Leslie Palti-Guzman. In each episode of this podcast, we will chat with energy experts from all around the world. They will tell us about their passion, inspiration, and aspiration. It's March 8th, 2019, and time for a new Energy Vista episode. Today, I'm exchanging with Rudolf Huber, president of LNG Austria, a non-profit advocacy organization whose role is to establish LNG as a fuel for vehicles. Rudolf is an outspoken expert on all things methane, with views that often challenge the consensus. He's based in Vienna. Hi, Rudolf.
Hi, Leslie.
Thanks for joining us, and happy International Women's Day for all the women listening to us today. We're going to discuss a couple of issues, including the role of gas in Europe, also the usage of gas as a transportation fuel, potentially to replace diesel, the green credentials of gas or the lack of, and maybe some, if we have some time, some discussion around the role of gas in Germany and German proposed regasification terminals to import LNG. So let me start by asking you, like very broadly, how pessimistic or optimistic are you about the role of gas in Europe? And from my perspective, I see that the role of gas is more certain in emerging markets, especially in Asia, than in post-industrial regions like Europe, mature economies. So, for instance, in Asia, we see that gas is expanding quickly and will potentially displace more polluting power generation, cooking, heating fuels, and notably to improve air quality in large cities. Potentially, also, it will be used in industrial and transportation sectors. But when it comes to countries that are transitioning to a lower carbon economy, it seems that gas, from the reputation side and acceptance, social acceptance, is harder. What do you think?
Well, I would already be happy if we had something like a good discussion about that here in Europe. Most people are running away, especially politicians, from no matter what country. As soon as you mention natural gas, they see one big, ugly fossil fuel, and that's bad, and that must be gotten rid of. So most people actually shy away from a proper discussion about it. But as you have asked me what I think that the prospects of natural gas in Europe are, in the longer term, I think they're excellent. Very, very simply because it's Europe is experimenting with a lot of stuff right now, and we have a lot of dreams about more electric mobility, hydrogen economy. It's more renewables into the grid, and so far, especially in Germany, we have been able to do that piggybacking on the fossil system as it has been built out over the last 50 years. So, renewables, especially, they have benefited from a lot of stuff that has been financed and earned by the economies of the different countries over a long period of time. And the built in flexibilities allowed them to do so. Now, certain countries like Germany, they are hitting a wall right now because renewables becomes a very significant part of the energy portfolio in those countries. And the old game of using the written of infrastructure from natural gas, coal, and everything else in order to balance out the imbalances in production, that starts not to work anymore. We are looking towards the serious prospect of brownouts or even blackouts in countries like Germany. Things that seemed completely impossible or unimaginable just about 5, 6 years ago. And when those things are going to happen, people will ask very, very hard questions. And then you need quick solutions. And the quickest solution is natural gas. Nothing goes quicker than a gas turbine.
Mm. And so you mentioned that the future of gas is also going to be, especially in Europe, a partner with greener energies or new technology. And you mentioned hydrogen. Can you talk a little bit about those new potential technology or greener zero emission technologies that gas will partner with in those smart cities and the future of our energy mix?
Well, everything I say right now, I say, of course, as a, let's say, prospect for the future. It's an idea that people are having because you won't find many people who really commit to anything in Europe right now. Everybody is afraid to go on the record.
Hmm.
But if we just talk
When you
about
say afraid to go on the record, meaning that it's toxic to talk about fossil fuel when
it
you're a
is.
policymaker.
It is absolutely yes. It is toxic today. If you talk about natural gas falls into the same camp as oil and coal. And
Yeah.
those who know will know that there is a world of a difference between methane on the one side and oil and coal on the other side. And I don't even want to start explaining. Just give you one difference, and that will make you see of where the differences really lie. It's oil and diesel fuel, for example, is a chemical cocktail. If you just look what kind of molecules you would find in there, this is a wide array of different paraffins and aromatics that are composed in a certain way as they come out of the refinery. That means an engine is optimized to run on that cocktail. If you change the cocktail, the engine won't run very nicely anymore. That means that's why you have so many different types of fuel and qualities of fuel. With methane, that's very different. That's a pure substance. You have regular methane, especially when it's LNG, is way more than 95% methane, one single molecule, and then a couple of traces of other things in there, most of them being more heavies or some nitrogen. That means it's completely harmless and non really incidental in the burning process, meaning that you can really optimize the combustion of methane to a point where it more or less doesn't give you anything nasty anymore, especially the things that are left over, like nitrogen oxides, the whiff that you have in it, you can easily remove with a three-way catalytic converter. You don't need this technology
Mm.
suite that you have with diesel, for example, where the filtering technology is bigger than the engine itself.
So, do you see a potential for gas also in the transportation sector in Europe to replace diesel, especially maybe in the for heavy duty trucks?
It is a gas is a solution. I mean, generally, you can say gas is a solution for everything. CNG exists in Europe and certain countries already for half a century. That's hardly news. It has just been, let's say, a fringe development. In certain countries, you have more of it. In other countries, you have less of it. Here in Austria, for example, I have CNG fueling stations now for as long as I can remember, as I'm living here in the city of Vienna. That's not news. In the heavy duty sector, you have the added benefit that you have an engine that runs very, very, very cleanly. If you used, for example, biomethane, you can make a heavy truck virtually emissions free, cleaner than an electric vehicle. Plus, you have a lot of range on top of it. I don't know if you have seen the latest tests, but we Iveco was able to run an LNG truck on one single fill for more than 1,500 kilometers. That's very appreciable. Compare that to, for example, those rigs that are proposed from Tesla that can hardly make 200 kilometers on one charge. There's a world of a difference between that. They're cheaper. It's very, very established technology. It means today you buy a natural gas, an LNG truck, and you know exactly what you get cost wise and technology wise. There's no uncertainty. There's no degrading of battery life for things like this. Just to give you an example, if you buy a city buses are usually bought for a certain circuit. That means when you buy the bus, you know where the bus is going to run for the next 40 years or 30 years, however long you want to run it. That
Right.
means you know exactly the driving profile of the bus in advance already, how many kilometers per day it's going to make. And when it comes to electric buses, you have those buses in the US. Proterra, for example, is one of the proponents. You usually manufacture the battery according to the profile of the bus, how the bus is going to drive through the traffic. The problem is when the battery loses 20% of its capacity and batteries degrade usually, yeah, you can't use the bus anymore suddenly. You don't have this problem with LNG. LNG
Uh,
runs just
can't
like
you
a
repl-
diesel engine with, yeah, sorry.
can't you replace the battery?
Well, you could replace the battery, but then you would have to buy a new battery, which essentially means buying a new bus. The cost of an electric bus is essentially the cost of the battery. The rest is incidentals.
Okay.
So
And
it's
so the main competition to the use of CNG or LNG for public transportation are currently EVs.
well, yeah, they are theoretically EVs because when it comes to a certain segment, like for example 40-ton trucks, there is no electric mobility there. There are a
Right.
couple of tests. Tesla is testing something. There's a couple of other companies that are testing prototypes. But the fact that those prototypes have been running now for quite a while and you don't see any kind of data in the public shows you very well that they are not doing very well, because
Hmm.
if they would be doing very well, you would have them a lot more public. They would be out there, would be trumpeting it all over the place.
Yeah.
So I would say anything that's beyond 15 or 20 tons is the exclusive domain of LNG.
Yeah. There are a couple of European cities that are planning on banning diesel by, I don't know, 2020 plus.
Hmm.
If that's realistic, we'll see. But what would be the impact on the use of gas as a transportation fuel?
Well, the good thing is, this is the quick answer, is that if they really want to go so, and if they really want to go quick with natural gas, with LNG vehicles, they can do that with a flick of a finger.
Right.
It's normal fleet replacement. Currently, for example, the city of Vienna, where I'm living, they are replacing the entire bus fleet
Yeah.
over a couple of years, of course. The first tranche has been Euro 6 diesel buses. We weren't obviously very happy with that, but the city of Vienna said, okay, they perceived that as the safer technology. At the time, LNG Austria didn't exist yet. We were still an initiative, and we didn't have quite the punch that we have today. So at the time, yeah, okay, well, it happened. But the second tranche is still up for grabs, and there's currently a discussion process underway. And we are trying to convince the city of Vienna to go for LNG
Mm.
because they are not really more expensive. They are much cleaner than anything that they could currently use. And they know certainly that those buses, once they buy them, they can run them for 30, 40 years like they were used to before. There's not going to be any prior breakdown. And they have now a couple of models to choose from as well. So it's not like they have only one producer.
Mm. Okay.
So
So
that can go very very quickly. It's not something radically different. It's not like you're replacing a 200,000 euro vehicle with a 700,000 euro vehicle. No, you're replacing a 200,000 euro vehicle with a 230,000 euro vehicle.
yeah.
That's a rounding error.
So one of the main challenge for the greater use of gas, whether it's in transportation or other utilization, is the social acceptance and it's sometimes lack of green credential. So what do you think the industry should address first? Well, first, to make the case for gas because sometimes it's not well understood or heard. And I think in big cities, one of the main issue is still methane leakage with old pipelines. I know in Paris, for instance, there is a very old um, distribution systems that haven't been replaced and that are leaking.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we're talking about a real, real big subject over here. Gas is a thorny subject, especially in Germany, but more or less all over Europe. Why? Because when people hear gas, they have immediately very negative connotations. I like to avoid the word gas altogether. Very special because of my Austrian background, and we have Second World War and all those connotations and everything. It's even if it's totally unfair, people have those kind of reflexes immediately. So what I like to talk about is methane. The good thing about methane as well, it's more precise because you could use, for example, propane butane mixtures in order to run your vehicles as well. That would be a gas when once you burn it as well. So methane is a more precise description of what you're doing. That's number one. People don't understand that. You can't. The population at large, not at all. I remember 5 or 6 years ago, I met the energy commissioner of Vienna, and we had a little chat about LNG. Yeah? The guy didn't even know that LNG exists and what it is. And that was the energy commissioner, somebody who is supposed to know what he's doing over here. Yeah, somebody coming from the industry, so to say. Yeah, well, he didn't. That shows you what the education level is. Now, gas in itself, when you look at the global marketing budget for gas, all countries taken together, all companies taken together, it's probably going to be smaller than the marketing budget of Tesla for Austria alone. Yeah, it's tiny. It's not here. You don't see it.
Yeah.
Gas completely disappears.
Yeah.
So what needs to be done, and this is something that we're doing in LNG Austria already. Somebody needs to go out there and bring the discussion to the people.
Yeah.
That means also there will be hard discussions. There are topics to be addressed. That's not going to be nice and funny and cuddly because gas is gas. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is methane. It is a fossil. I mean, most of it is a fossil today. We still have biomethane, but that's just a whiff currently. And it's a combustible. It burns. Yeah, it
Mhm.
is not toxic, but people associate with gas all things dangerous. Have you seen the movie Syriana with George Clooney?
No. Oh, maybe a long time ago.
Yeah, there was a scene at the end where a boy with a rocket propelled grenade in a boat
Right.
went
Right.
against an LNG tanker, and then they faded it out into the white,
Yeah.
suggesting that there was an explosion of absolutely enormous proportions, something like half of the country is in shambles. Yeah?
Mm.
When in reality, if something like this would happen, the only explosion that you would see would be the RPG that explodes. The LNG certainly wouldn't explode, not with a Moss tanker. So,
Right.
there's all those perceptions that are being created that are completely fails.
Yeah.
And I'm not even blaming George Clooney. I don't believe he knew what he was doing
I
when they
didn't
put the
realize it
thing.
was an LNG tanker, actually. I thought it was an oil tanker.
Yeah, it was an LNG tanker. I mean, you had the Moss tanks on top, and so that
I don't
made it
I
very,
don't care.
very.
Yeah. But Rudolf, like the gas industry lobby is arguing that the world is so one is far from being on track to achieve its CO2 target cuts, and that it should use gas as a fast track emission reduction measure.
Yeah.
So that gas is the fastest and quickest way to reduce carbon emission. But you know, I think that the future role of gas will also depend on the industry ability to bolster its greener image, and that will be through curbing CO2 and methane emission. Is there something specific that LNG Austria is doing to address those two issues?
Well, when it comes to methane emissions, we'll have to be clear about one thing. Most of the methane emissions today come from either very, very old equipment. I mean, you
Mhm.
have mentioned it yourself. Those old lines in Paris, they're probably 50 years old or so. I mean, anything that's old needs replacement at one point in time. And if that has not been done, those lines that have exploded in the US, for example, some of them were more than 70 years old. They were laid just after the Second World War. I mean, no wonder it's not working. Yeah, they are really, really stone old. That's the reason. It's not because gas is dangerous per se. And the second issue in methane slip is that when you take a diesel engine and you convert it to natural gas or to biofuel behavior, because this is a diesel engine and it hasn't been built for natural gas, of course, there's a certain amount of gas slip through the engines.
Mm,
That's totally normal and to be expected because the engine hasn't been built to handle gas.
yeah,
If you look at, and I'm just taking one example, the Iveco Stralis that has been built for natural gas only and has the engine to match, there's no gas slip anymore.
yeah,
That's over. It's I mean it's measurable in homeopathic doses. It's so small that you can't even really measure it anymore.
yeah,
So and the same thing is when it comes to methane emissions, for example. People are looking at shale in the U.S. today because of the methane that goes to the air. There is some flaring, yes. There is some methane slippage that goes into the air, yes, as well. But that's in no way a comparison to, for example, what happens in countries like Nigeria or Russia or some Middle Eastern countries, where there is real BCMs that are being flared
yeah, yeah,
every year. So we really need to keep perspective here. And LNG Austria, what we're doing is that because we're a small organization, we need to focus on those people that are changing something. That means we are first working with politicians, giving them the information that they need in order to further carry on the debate in their own circles.
Hmm. Okay.
We need to harden them in a certain way. If
Yeah.
we attack them only and we tell them, look guys, you're doing the wrong thing over here, and then we don't give them a solution or we don't help them anyway, that's the wrong tech, because they will just stiffen and even grow more resistant. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then what we're planning for this year is our first big marketing campaign where we show also the social side of natural gas, because when we talk about the green image, we always forget about the people. The greenest solution would be that humanity leaves Earth altogether. That would be green. As long as we're going to be here on Earth, there will always be a certain impact on the environment. That's what we're having. So we
Hmm.
need to be clear about that. And if we just push solutions like electric mobility for individuals, and we know that an EV, a comparable EV, will not cost you 15,000 euros when you buy it, but 50,000 euros when you buy it, you know that 2/3 of the people won't be able to afford a car anymore.
Right.
Is that really something that a politician is ready to tell his constituents that he's asking for a vote at the next election for? You have seen it in France with the yellow vests.
Yeah.
They had, of course, a whole list of different demands, but the energy price or fuel pricing was one of the core issues that actually made this whole issue come up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you view gas as potentially a sustainable energy source in Germany? There has been a lot written about the ambivalence of Germany when it comes to its energy policy, increasing the share of coal and renewables, but not being very supportive of the role of gas while phasing out nuclear. And you have a specific opinion on Germany and what they should do with gas.
Well, Germany, if you just look at Germany as a country, the energy policy of Germany, I think, has been a mess for the last couple of 5, 6, 7 years. Since Fukushima happened, I haven't seen anything really sensible coming out of the country. And it gets worse rather than better. The problem is
They
that
have a strong environmental lobby.
yeah, they have. And when you talk to the environmentalists, they will make all sorts of demands. You can't put a power plant over here. You couldn't put a pipeline over here and everything. Yeah, but on the other side, they expect everything to work. They come home, they want to take a shower, they want to eat their dinner, they want to watch television and the soap operas and everything. And at some point, just doesn't work anymore. I mean, we'll have to. There are three possible ways. Either we say we want a lot of renewables here. We don't want to pay the price in order to balance out the imbalances. Then you will have to contend with that there will be times, maybe even daily, when you don't have power. That will come back. We haven't had it for half a century. Well, now it comes back to us. Yeah? I doubt people will be happy with that. Second solution would be that, okay, we put a lot of buffering in. That means giant batteries and all kinds of other stuff in order to store the electricity. Well, then get ready for electricity prices just to go out of the window. Germany has already the second most expensive electricity on earth. We'll expect that to rise further. Yeah. Will people be happy with that, knowing that they're already now grumbling about high energy prices? I doubt that. And the third solution would be to say, okay, let's do something sensible and let's have a lot of backup power. And the quickest and cleanest backup power that you can have is natural gas. So
Mhm.
the more Germany maneuvers itself into this corner, the more they will need natural gas in order just to get out of it again.
Right, and
Currently, yeah.
it seems that the policymaker are understanding this because we see that Nord Stream 2 is potentially still moving ahead, and there are 4 proposed regasification LNG terminals now in Germany.
Well, the policymakers themselves, they do not understand anything. The only thing they understand is that Chancellor Merkel is on her way out. She's a dead duck. Nobody counts on her for anything anymore because we know she's going to leave.
Right.
So she doesn't really count anymore. I mean, what do you want from her? She's just waiting her time out until her successor takes over. Then, of course, when she goes, they'll it's in some time there will be an election, so everybody will be frozen for the results of the election. Nobody's going to do anything, and right now there is no brain in this entire process. There is no intelligent guidance. They are just doing things on a day by day basis. They want to have Nord Stream 2 because it's a popular idea, and they think they get cheaper gas, and they think they're going to make money by selling the gas to the rest of Europe, but they're not sure about that. And they are supporting LNG terminal proposals, not because they believe in LNG, but they believe that's the way of how to appease Trump
Exactly.
in but there's no real brains in this whole thing. It's if you look at all four proposals at the LNG terminal proposal, it's actually 3+1, because there's three apples and one pear. That's the Rostock project. It's a lot smaller, and it's not really destined to provide gas into the system, but more for LNG as a fuel or balancing purposes. It's a much smaller terminal. It's a very, very different beast from the three others. Very interesting one, actually. It's I personally like it a lot.
Yeah. So you think that the share of gas in Germany will increase in the medium
Yes,
and long term? Yeah.
absolutely, it will increase. There's no other way. I mean, once they have backed themselves into a corner, they will have to make it work somehow. And as I said, gas is the quickest.
Yeah. So, Rudolf, let's move to our second and third section of the podcast, which is your professional and personal trajectory. So, you worked in some corporate organizations for a couple of years, and you decided to move as an independent consultant. Can you walk through your experience in the corporate world? I think you enjoyed it, and what was the rationale behind your move to become an independent consultant?
Oh, I didn't only enjoy it. I actually loved that. I was head of business development for OMV, which is still the biggest oil and gas company of Central Europe.
Yeah.
And my responsibilities were, of course, limited to gas. And I mean, when I say OMV, had a subsidiary called Econ Gas, and that's what I was responsible for. So I wasn't responsible for the entire OMV group. But it's in I initiated more or less LNG. That whole thing started on my desk.
Yeah.
The reason was very simply because there were a couple of other persons that looked into LNG before, but then they found out that's a piece of work. Nobody had ever done LNG before. Nobody wanted to take any risk, and I found it exciting. And I was the one that actually raised his hand when it came to distributing portfolios. That was a very, very exciting journey. I loved it. I really, really loved it. It was just my kind of thing. The reason why I stopped after 6 years was that in 2008 my oldest son was born, and in 2010 we found out, we were confirmed actually, he is autistic and very heavily handicapped. He's now 10 years old. He still doesn't talk. And when you have a child with very special needs like this, you come to the point in your life where you have to make a couple of really, really hard decisions. And one of them was, as head of business development, I was traveling. I was racking up almost 1 million air miles per year.
Yeah.
That was a totally unsustainable situation. I was sometimes, I wasn't home for 3 weeks. I just
Mhm.
came home, changed suitcases, yeah, and then off to the airport again and off to the next destination. And I was all over the world. That was that was a strain to family life, of course, before, but that's something you deal with when you're a manager. You make a decision.
Yeah.
But with a handicapped child, you can't do that anymore. It's
Mhm.
either you put your child into some kind of institution, or you just change your own life. And putting my child into an institution was completely out of question for me and my
Yeah,
wife as well.
and I mean, he's homeschooled, right? So
He's homeschooled, yes.
yeah, so you needed a lot of flexibility and in your schedule, and I guess you managed to create like a kind of work-life balance for yourself that you were not necessarily able to do in the corporate world.
Work-life balance is a big word. It's I'm almost laughing when I hear it. It's I must confess that when I struck out on my own in 2011, it's I had a certain number of ideas of what exactly I'm going to do and who I'm going to work for and what I wanted life to be. And I must confess that things for the first 3 years didn't really work out the way I planned them.
Mhm.
It was, I was burning through my savings, and I changed business a couple of times over, and there were lots of scars that I took in this time, which, with hindsight today, actually was a necessary process because it cleaned my head and it cleaned my business and everything. You continue making hard decisions because you cut out things that don't work because they're eating up too many resources.
Mhm.
So work-life balance today, it somehow came into being. It's not a planned process. There wasn't a brain that dictated things have to be like this and like this and like this. I'm now doing this for 8 years, and it's things have just somehow started to go in a certain way. I have my own office over here attached to the apartment.
Mhm.
It's I'm only closing doors when I'm doing things like I'm talking with you right now.
Right.
But otherwise, the door is open. The kids can always come in, and I have developed the ability to just do real work at home
Mhm.
in my office. Sometimes when you have to work on a business plan or on a project plan, it takes you half an hour or an hour until you're really in the soup of it.
Right.
And then something comes up and some drama happens, and then you have to get back in there again. That takes some time to get used to it. But let me be frank, I wouldn't want to go back. If somebody gave me 4 times the money I made before in OMV, I wouldn't want to go back. Not because I didn't like OMV, I liked it a lot, yeah, but because I like my life so much right now.
Right. Well, Rudolph, thank you so much for sharing this personal and moving story, and being very spontaneous about it. And I think it's very inspiring to hear different stories like yours, and understand by examples and illustrations what can work. Well, thank you so much, Rudolph, and we'll be in touch, and maybe we'll have you for another episode, maybe focusing more on Germany next time once the elections are over.
Yeah, that will be interesting for
Yeah.
sure.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That concludes our Energy Vista podcast, which was recording on March 8th, 2019. Our theme music is provided by Music Screen, licensed under Creative Commons. This is Leslie Palti-Guzman saying good day and good luck.